Hi everyone, this is Alex. I just wanted to have a short disclaimer about this episode. I experienced some audio clipping. I did my best to sort of salvage what I could. It's not awful throughout, but it's mostly through the Trancers 3 part of the podcast that I experienced massive dropout. And I did the best that I could to sort of edit around that and to sort of re-record what my thoughts were during that. But my goals for this show is to have my off the cuff opinion, and there's occasionally some background noise from my neighbors. I thought recording this late at night, it's about 1:30 a.m. right now, that I would be safe, but unfortunately that's not necessarily always the case. But so is life. I'm gonna try some new recording techniques in the future to have better quality for this show, because I'm having a blast doing it, and I don't want you guys experiencing clipping while listening to the show. Again, I don't think that it's terrible, but it's not something that I want to have happen going forward. I appreciate your patience as I try to figure this out, and as my cats continue to play and make noise in the background too. So take care and enjoy the show.
Investigation of the supernatural. It contains material which some viewers may find to be disturbing.
Back to Angel City PD, may I see your stats?
Mostly machine. You're not really human anymore, are you?
Just remember, it's hard to get there. We actually have to get there. What does katana mean? It means Japanese sword.
There's a storm coming. A storm the likes that you've never seen before.
Tell me again how it feels when you get really frightened.
Dressing up like a whore and working on these 2-bit cases.
Heroes, the Earth people are getting closer to that which we fear.
Hello and welcome to another episode of B-Movie Binge. I am your host, Alex Ross, aka A. Charles Ross. And before we start tonight's show proper, I want to get into some B-movie news, because I do have something that I'm very, very excited about to talk about. So it has been announced that there is a film going into Kickstarter called The Last Kumite. And The Last Kumite is being produced by Jason Brandt of So Bad It's Good, of Oliver Harper, produced by Oliver Harper and Sean David. The film is a sort of tribute to films like Bloodsport, Kickboxer, No Retreat, No Surrender. Cheesy martial arts films with fantastic fight scenes. It will feature an original song by Stan Bush. It will star Cynthia Rothrock, Billy Blanks, Kurt McKinney, Matthew Landwehr, and Matthias Hughes, along with many others. And of course, my cats are definitely chiming in, because they are also very excited about this. The Last Kumite will be directed by Ross W. Clarkson. So they started their Kickstarter about a week ago, and there's about 40 days left. So if you're interested, like me, in B-movie action, whether it be karate or science fiction, I think this is a very awesome thing to get involved with. And of course, I went with the tier that allows for like the Blu-ray and everything. So I'm excited to see how that turns out, and I wish them nothing but the best. So, getting into tonight's episode. Tonight, we're talking about Trancers 3 and Nemesis 3. Starting with Nemesis 3, aka Nemesis 3 Pray Harder, or Nemesis 3 times Time Lapse. When I watched it on Tubi, it was listed in my queue as Pray Harder, and then when I actually watched the film, it was Time Lapse. So it's another one of those B movies where the title changed quite a bit. It is directed by Albert Punier. It is written by Rebecca Charles and Albert Punier. It stars Sue Price and Tim Thomerson. It was released in 1996. So, I'm going to be honest right off the bat. I was a little disappointed with this one. I loved Nemesis 2 and I liked Nemesis 1. Nemesis 2 was a action-packed thrill ride for me, and I felt like it stayed to its strengths. Like, it stayed in its lane. Like, there wasn't too much story. It was plenty action-packed. It was basically like a chase movie through the desert with Sue Price's character, Alex Rain. And her trying to escape from this cyborg killer. But this film, Alex wakes up in the desert. If you remember right, at the end of Nemesis 2, Alex was being driven away in a military vehicle, and the last shot was this red energy orb kind of chasing after them, and then that's when the film closed. But at the beginning of this film, it does kind of the same thing that Nemesis 2 did at the beginning, where it sort of recaps some events from the previous film. So we get to see Alex's mom once again sort of go back in time and take Alex as a child back into the past in order to protect her. And this happens during the opening credits. But we find Alex in the modern day 1980s, awake in the desert. She is badly injured and she has total amnesia. Like, she doesn't know what happened to her. So we don't know what has happened to the troops that picked her up, and neither does she. So she figures out that she has like these footprints, and she follows this trail of footprints, and she encounters Tim Thomerson's character. And I was really confused because Tim Thomerson's character was definitely killed off in the first movie, and his character wasn't really the real version of himself because it was a cyborg copy. So I was like, is this the original guy? Is this a potential ally for Alex? Or is this another cyborg asshole? So I actually didn't know that Tim Thomerson was going to be in this. I somehow must have missed his name in the opening credits, or he just wasn't included. So it was a cool surprise because I like him as an actor most of the time. So he introduces himself as Farnsworth II, which is a hint that he might actually be a cyborg and not a good guy. And he offers to help her, and she's, of course, very, very confused. And he gets very strange as she's sort of like leaning against his car, and she's like in a daze. So he like starts scanning her like literally with his eyes. There are these eye beams that look like they're straight out of Superman 4. And it's clear that he's trying to get a DNA read from her, and that's what the villain in Nemesis 2 was doing. So he's asking her a bunch of questions, and he gives her some medicine to sort of subdue her, and he scans her. And what I hate the most about this scene is how much time it wastes with flashbacks. These flashbacks to Nemesis 2, and it has this weird like sound effect. Like each time it goes into Alex's memory, it's like this blue filter on stuff we already saw from Nemesis 2. And it wouldn't be so bad if it did the same thing that Nemesis 2 did at the beginning of its film, where it just did it during the first 5 minutes or so, just sort of recap the audience. But the thing is, this does this for almost the first 20 minutes or so. I'm not joking. Like, it felt like it took forever. And the sound effect to when it goes like into her brain to sort of show the audience what she's remembering, it's mind-boggling. Like, it's a really annoying sound, and they do it over and over and over again until they hammer it into your brain. But eventually Alex does get fed up with Farnsworth II scanning her, and she stabs him in the eye with a pair of scissors. And as she starts to sort of remember more things, we get a title screen that says 22 hours earlier. So we're going to learn what exactly happened to those soldiers and some of these other people that she saw flashes of that we didn't recognize from the second film. And this is all within the first 20 to 30 minutes. So this film wastes too much time with storytelling. It doesn't play to its strength. I thought Punier learned his lesson. Like, I thought he was playing to his strengths, which was stunts, kick-ass action with, you know, bodybuilders and gymnasts and other people that definitely acting isn't their strength. Like, I mean, I love them in the action and stuff. But, you know, as far as, you know, in Nemesis 2, the talking was down to a minimum, you know, in tight scenes that did move the plot along, but wasn't trying too hard to tell a bigger story. Nemesis 3 feels like Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 1, where it's setting up events for Part 2. So I'm hoping that means that Nemesis 4 is going to be completely kick ass, but we'll see. So, tangent over. So, after being rescued by these soldiers and Alex are surprised by a group of insurgents. And unfortunately, the soldiers are killed. And Alex is left alone after she avenges her, you know, newfound friends. And this necklace that she got from her mom starts to glow. And she finds a time machine. And it turns out that in this time machine, she has a half-sister named Rain. And I have to wonder if her full name is Rain because Alex is Alex Rain. God, I hope so. So Rain explains to Alex that they have 20 half-sisters. You know, these hybrid super badass super soldiers. But Alex is unique because she can procreate, and they can start a new breed of genetically enhanced humans capable of wiping out the cyborgs in the future. She tells Alex that there is a limited amount of time. There's 24 hours that they have to get back to the future. And why don't they make their escape then and there? Because there wouldn't be a movie, I guess. But because also, you know, Farnsworth 2, because again, this is in the past, this is 22 hours earlier, is after them. And so they go their separate ways, you know, divide and conquer, and Alex runs into a mercenary named Edison and somebody named Johnny, a freedom fighter who has sort of a brain injury, are kind of hang out with Alex. Like, Alex wants to know where she can find her sister, and maybe her sister has been kidnapped by the cyborgs. And more cyborgs start showing up. That was my biggest not pet peeve, but problem with Nebula 2 is that Alex fought a lot of just normal everyday people, you know, soldiers, and there weren't any cyborgs. I regret requesting cyborgs because the cyborgs in this movie are I don't know what they were thinking, because the cyborgs in this movie, you know, when they got injured in the first movie, you know, there'd be body parts getting blown off, and you'd see like these really cool prosthetics that you know, Terminator style prosthetics. But in this movie, they like short circuit with this 1960s style Star Trek electricity, and they have these green glowing eyes that make them stick out like a sore thumb, and it's superimposed on their eyes. Like, it's sort of like a like literally if you took a picture of yourself and edited it in paint and did like a little green highlighter, that's what it would look like. I don't know what they were thinking. It was incredible to me. Like, it was so funny each time they were on the, you know, on the screen. And what kills me is they did hire two women that were definitely gymnasts / bodybuilders. They were very built, and I think they very briefly appeared in Nemesis 2, you know, chasing Alex's mom. So these two women are now after Alex, and they remind me of the twins from Highlander 2 because they will just randomly like cackle at each other. Like, at random times, they will randomly like cackle at each other, and they're not very intimidating, and for some reason they also glow yellow, like there's this yellow filter over them, and I don't know if that's for the audience or if that's just how they look in real life. Like, that wasn't set up in either of the first two films, where the cyborgs, glow yellow, have green eyes, or short circuit like a Star Trek 60s character. And I don't know why they decided to go this route. Maybe they ran out of money and didn't have the money to do the awesome prosthetics that they had in the first film. And if that's the case, I guess I just wish they would have, found another way to do it instead of just doing this really weird effect that is super cheesy. Like, there's a moment in the film where Tim Thomerson's character gets frustrated with one of the other cyborgs, so he just shoots him. And the thing is, they're like driving along the road, so of course this guy falls out, and Tim Thomerson just comes and keeps shooting him repeatedly. And this scene goes on for like a good 2 or 3 minutes, like Tim Thomerson trying to kill his subordinate, this cyborg that has apparently let him down. It was hysterical. And Tim Thomerson is really bad in this movie. I don't know what happened, because I've liked him in pretty much everything that I've seen him in. And, I get that they were going for kind of what they did in the original film, where the cyborgs are less human, but their dialogue delivery comes off cringy. And maybe it's not his fault. It's what the director told him to do, because I think Punier definitely struggles with dialogue. And the thing is, with these B movies, you can't do that. You've got to stick to your strengths. Go for cheese. Our next movie that we're talking about knew what it was doing, but we're still on Nemesis 3. So after Alex, Johnny, and Edison are ambushed by these cyborg twins, the laughing twins, they think that they kill Alex, despite the fact that Farnsworth has told the twins that they want Alex alive. They throw a grenade at her and they think she's dead. So they take Johnny and Edison back to Farnsworth too. And of course, Alex tracks them down and she starts kicking ass. And unfortunately, the action during this part of the film is a lot of fun. Like, it's goofy. I wanted more of that, but it still wasn't at the same level that they did with Nemesis 2. And I know they shot Nemesis 2, 3, and 4 pretty much back to back, so I'm wondering if they had to scale back their budget for this one in order to have the first and last part of this trilogy, I don't know, be more epic. I feel this feels like a definitely... it feels like the first part. It feels like Mockingjay Part 1 or Deathly Hallows Part 1, where it's not going to be as good as what it sets up. And I can't believe I'm comparing Nemesis 3 to one of the Hunger Games sequels, but here we are. So they try to escape, and Farnsworth, who is apparently still alive, throws this like spider drone, and the spider drone like chases after the Jeep, and the Jeep explodes. The Jeep they're trying to escape on explodes. And the effect around these Jeeps, which are supposedly from the future or something, is strange. It makes them look, I don't even know how to explain it, like liquidy. It was something else. So now we're at the point where Alex wakes up in the middle of the desert, and she's wondering what happened to all of her friends. And it's heavily implied that all of her friends, Johnny and Edison and her half-sister, Rain, are dead. So she decides that she's going to go to the future and kick some ass. Like, she is pissed. And that's where the movie ends. Like, it sets up this epic event, and before there's like a sort of mid-credits scene where Alex is in full like combat gear, and there's explosions happening behind her. Like it's this 5 to 10 second scene, and that has me excited for Nemesis 4. Like I hope that Nemesis 4 is just straight action. Like I don't need all the story and the dialogue that Nemesis 3 as far as like story and dialogue was way worse than the first one, because at least the first one had, you know, great action in between those. Nemesis 3 had barely any action. Like there's way too much talking. So unfortunately I was definitely let down by Nemesis 3. It doesn't feel like a movie that I would go back and rewatch like the first two, and definitely the second one. Like, I mean, the second one is one that I would be excited to watch with my friends, you know, just for, you know, a B movie night, you know. But as far as fun facts for Nemesis 3, again, like I said, Tim Thomerson did come back for this sequel. And I guess apparently Punier envisioned 2, 3, and 4 as one gigantic movie, like it's a continuing story. And according to my research, this was indeed filmed back to back with parts 2 and 4. And I'm hoping that part 4 isn't even worse than these other two. I'm hoping that and I'm hoping that it is exciting. So, with that big bummer out of the way, I want to move on to Trancers 3. So, I was much happier with this film. Like, it feels like it's along the same lines as the first two. It feels like if you were to set aside where you're a movie night where you're like, you know what, I want to watch a B movie trilogy. Like watching Trancers 1, 2, and 3 would make for a good trilogy watch through. So, Trancers 3 was released in 1992. It stars Tim Thomerson, Melanie Smith, Helen Hunt, and Andrew Robinson. It is directed by C. Courtney Joyner. I apologize if I am butchering that name. It is. So the film starts in modern day 1992. Jack Death is now a successful private detective who catches cheating lovers in the act. However, he's down on his luck. And I say he's down on his luck because Jack's wife, Lena, Hunt's character, is not happy with Death anymore because, I mean, he's a Trancer hunter at heart. And he's sort of stuck in this time period where he doesn't feel like he really belongs. I mean, the only place he feels like he belongs is with her. And the thing is, he's also stuck in between, you know, who he is, which is this burnt out detective that wants nothing to do than to hunt down Trancers and be with the woman he loves. But he can't really have both. And I will say again, Tim Thomerson is great as this character. Like, it feels very Blade Runner-y. He plays this detective that is burnt out, that smokes cigarettes, that monologues to himself, that is married pretty much to the job and nothing else. He plays this role very, very, very well. Even in this B movie that is super cheesy and over the top and fun to watch, you know, Tim Thomerson's performance as Jack Death is pretty good. Like, it's a pretty good role for him. So, while he is trying to catch this man that is cheating with his wife, and he's told Lena that he's going to sort of try to patch up things with her, like he's like, I'm gonna take this one last job. It's always that one last job, and baby, I'll be home, and I'm gonna commit to you. He makes this promise to her, but unfortunately, before he can mend this trouble, he is kidnapped by a kaiju looking motherfucker that is in a trench coat. Like, he looks like he's like this fish man cyborg is the best way I can think to describe him. And Death refers to this individual as Godzilla. And in the cast, he is listed as Shark. So Shark knocks out Jack Death and takes him back to the year 2352. And it turns out that Angel City is now a shithole. The Trancers have taken over. And the remaining citizens and whatever's left of the police force is hiding out in this abandoned building where everybody is pretty much shot to shit. So Alice, the doctor from the previous two films, I think, tells him that he needs to go back to 2005 and find out where this new wave of Trancers came from and end it. So a actually rather good firefight scene breaks out where Death and his other ex-wife is trying to get to this time machine so he can go back to 2000 modern day 2005, and there are Trancers after them, of course. And the tracking shot that does this shooting scene is actually quite well done. I was actually impressed. I was like, wow, this is a really well made. It felt like one take, because they're running through the hallways of this warehouse and there's Trancers popping up everywhere, and Jack and Alice are taking out the Trancers, and it's a very bare knuckled shootout scene. But they do make it to the time machine, and Jack is transported into modern day 2005. So he goes back to 2005, and he figures out that Lena has the pulse on what is going on with these new wave of Trancers. But there's a big problem. Lena is remarried now, and she looks exactly the same as she did in 1992. But she's Helen Hunt, so of course she hasn't aged. She is now remarried. She's got a little girl, and she apparently has this contact named RJ, who is a sort of this soldier that is sort of in the early stages of transforming into a Trancers, because there is another journal named Colonel Daddy Mother. No, I'm not kidding. That's what he's called in the film. And he has this underground complex where he trains these Trancers, and there's 10 levels to this drug. And so it's once you start with level 1, you have a chance of coming off of it. But it's once you get to level 10, you're in, baby. You're full half human, half zombie soldier, crazed soldier. So RJ, obviously terrified, doesn't want any part of that. So she, finds Lena, who is a reporter reporting on the story. But the thing is, Lena was protecting her, and she's like, well, you can go with Jack. Jack will protect you, and he'll know what to do. So Jack leaves Lena behind with her daughter. And what I found interesting about this scene is that the camera lingers on Lena Death for a little bit as she's watching her daughter play. So I'm wondering, is she really remarried? Or is that Jack Death's daughter? I'm wondering if that's going to be a twist in the next couple of movies for Trancers. But anyways, that is my prediction anyway. But anyways, so Jack learns from RJ that the government, the United States government, has sponsored a new Trancers program. And like I said, Colonel Daddy Mother is doing this whole thing. And Colonel Daddy is played by Andrew Robinson. And this is probably my favorite Trancers villain thus far, because Andrew Robinson, who played the Scorpio Killer and Dirty Harry and the father in Hellraiser, he's creepy. He's creepy. He's weird. And I think he's the most intimidating villain, because you're not sure what he's going to do. And whenever he transforms, early Trancers, it always sounds like they're on the verge of an orgasm. It's very strange. But the villains in number 1 and 2, Whistler and then Whistler's brother, were just okay. Like, they served the plot all right. Like, they were formidable, I guess. But I feel like Andrew Robinson is, a great actor. Like, he's been in great films. So I feel like he definitely elevated his part. So eventually RJ and Death get captured by this group of Trancers, and they're taken into this underground base, and oh no, Death himself is slowly getting turned into a Trancer. But RJ, who is sort of intimidated into rejoining the Trancers, changes her mind, and she breaks him out. So him and RJ take out a bunch of Trancers, but it turns out that RJ is kind of too far gone. Like, she can't control herself. She turns on Death, and before she can like bring herself to shoot him, she begs him to kill her, and Death does. But Death is not alone. The shark mandroid, comes back in time to help Death to take out the rest of the Trancers. So Death and Shark Boy take out the rest of the Trancers. They kill Colonel Daddy Mother, and Death, who is licking his wounds, is transported back to the future, where they tell him, hey, by the way, you've got your job back and you're going to go on vacation, but you can't say no to this new job because then we wouldn't be able to make sequels. Then he sort of walks off with Shark, his arm injured, and he decides to go out on a date with his ex-wife, and things are all hunky-dory, and then comes the credits. Did that sound quick? That's because this movie is an hour and 15 minutes. This movie goes by real quick. Like, it's short like the first one. Like, the second one was like an hour and a half, I think. But both Trancers 3 and 1 are about an hour and 15 minutes. And I think that is for the best, because these movies know what they're doing. They're cheesy science fiction action films that don't overstay their welcome. And I appreciated that, especially after the mess of Nemesis 3. I thought that Trancers 3 was fun. I thought that Tim Thomerson was great as Jack Death once again. If you're a fan of the first two, I think Trancers 3 is just as good as the first two. It doesn't overstay its welcome. What I found interesting is that Helen Hunt was getting pretty big at this point. So, I mean, it was cool that she came back to do Trancers 3. In fact, the producers originally didn't even bother asking her, because they were like, we can't afford her and she's way too big. And I guess she remained close with Band and Thomerson, and she heard about this and she's like, I'll come back and you guys can just pay me whatever. And I mean, her role was a little bit smaller because she was working on Mad About You, but she was cool enough to come back. And I wonder if, because I don't think she's in Trancers 4, 5, or 6. If they ever did another Trancers movie, would she come back? I don't know. I think it would be kind of cool. But I always think it's cool when these big name actors are proud of where they came from. Like, Jack Nicholson loves to talk about his time working with Roger Corman. Be proud of where you came from. Originally, Charles Band was supposed to direct this one, but he had more responsibilities at Full Moon Entertainment and couldn't, so he was just producer. And I guess they introduced the idea of this shark android as a sort of fill-in in case Tim Thomerson couldn't do all the action, because he was getting a little bit older at this point. But I guess they were really surprised by how agile he was behind the scenes, so good for him. And it's heavily implied that McNulty died during the Trancers War that Jack Death is brought into. So I hope that they bring back McNulty for either 4 or 5 or 6, because he was a cool character. It was cool to see Death's interaction with him. But overall, Trancers 3 was a fun ride. I think it's up there with parts 1 and 2. And I'm very excited to watch Trancers 4, and I'm still excited to watch Nemesis 4, but I'm a little worried that there's going to be a little bit too much talky and not enough action, but we will see. But that is all for B Movie Binge. If you are listening on YouTube, comment below. Let me know how you're enjoying the show. Again, I'm still trying to improve the show. I'm hoping to start a Facebook page. I'm hoping to start an Instagram page specifically for the show. I'm hoping to dedicate more time to this. I'm very much enjoying doing B Movie Binge, and I appreciate those of you that have listened. Take care. Goodbye.